Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. The smash Broadway musical Wicked comes to the Kennedy Center tomorrow through January 22nd in Washington, D.C. I spoke to actor Michael Genet about the social commentary between Elphaba and Galinda, as well as his own journey from growing up in Washington, D.C. to writing She Hate Me for Spike Lee.
Hi, I'm Michael Genet, and I played Dr. Dillerman in Wicked.
And it's Wicked, the musical, the smash Broadway musical. Everybody knows it at this point. And it's coming to the Kennedy Center December 8th through January 22nd, the whole holiday season. Hey, thanks so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. So in case somehow, people missed it or didn't see it on Broadway, I mean, everyone's at least seen The Wizard of Oz. So tell us how this is sort of I don't want to say alternate take, but an expanded take on the story of the Wicked Witch. Give us a basic sort of premise.
Well, it is based on The Wizard of Oz, as you said, and what the creatives did here is they flipped it to take us. I guess the analogy would be that we go behind the scenes to find out how Glinda, the Good Witch, and the Wicked Witch of the West became who they are. And so Wicked, the musical, takes place when they meet at school, when they're much, much younger. And obviously, Elphaba, who would be the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, Elphaba, when she comes to the school, she's green. She's literally green from head to toe. And Galinda, who actually at that time is so pompous and full of herself, pronounces her name bougie as Galinda.
Oh, Galinda. You have to emphasize the ga.
You have to emphasize the ga. And of course, everyone at the school, when they see Galinda, they want to be her best friend because she's the it girl. She's the smart one in the class. She's the popular one, and
she's the mean girl.
Yeah, she's the mean girl, and everyone wants to be in her circle. And then when Elphaba shows up, they're all petrified because they look at her and they think she's some abnormal monster or something, and they try to stay as far away from her as possible. But as fate would have it, the school ends up making Elphaba and share a room with Galinda, and Galinda actually had, because she comes from a richy bougie family, her family had established a single suite for herself at school. But Elphaba gets assigned, because they didn't have any more space, so Elphaba gets put into the room with Galinda, and they have an oil and water relationship up front. I mean, Elphaba is as sweet as can be, and is open and nurturing and warm as anyone could ever hope for a person to be. But somehow the two of them form this wonderful friendship, and it blossoms into this thing that travels through the rest of their lives, and it touches upon all the bases of what we're dealing with in society today, of inclusion versus exclusion, the people who are popular for no other reason than they're popular. I won't call out any names who that is.
I think we know what you're going for.
The people who have some real skill, because Elphaba comes in and she's got this real skill set that she doesn't even know how to manage at this point, but she's got this real skill for magic. It just emanates from her body. And Galinda wants to be in the class where she hones a magical skill, but she doesn't really have any kind of talent. But Elphaba it just oozes from her, and so they formulate this relationship, and we see all the machinations of what's going on in our world today. Elphaba would be the immigrant, if you will. And
the quote unquote, as the evil forces would like to paint as, quote, the other. And exactly.
The other, exactly. And the unwanted, and the one to be shunned. But she turns out to be this truly magnanimous soul. And so the guy who is the mirror equivalent, Fiyero, of Galinda, he's so narcissistic and so full of himself, but he's also so handsome and gorgeous. Initially, it looks like he and Galinda, because they are two peas in the pod, are going to end up being together. But something happens between him and Elphaba, and she makes him open his eyes. She's not even trying to make him, but her very being makes him open his eyes and realizes, wow, he's seeing a beauty in her that he really didn't even know existed. And the relationship between them blossoms into this really pure love affair, that he's willing to let himself be transformed, because he loves her so deeply. And the thing between Elphaba and Dr. Dillerman is that Dr. Dillerman is like her. He's the only animal on the faculty. He's a professor at the school.
He's like a goat. It's like a goat costume, I think.
He's a goat. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the goat.
You are the goat.
I am the goat. But he's the only one animal on the faculty now, because they've been phasing out all the animals, because the animals are different and they don't want different under their sky. And
critical animal theory. Oh, we can't teach that in our schools.
Yeah, exactly. And he sees the storm clouds blowing in. He knows that change is upon us. Mm-hmm. at Shears, Shears University, which is the school they go to. And he's trying to sound the alarm, and he finds an ally in Elphaba, because she understands the importance of being accepted when one is different and not shunning people who are different. So they form this alliance to the point where he starts to confide in her what he sees is going on. And she realizes, oh my God, something really dangerous is afloat. And then he gets axed. They wipe him off the map. They just violently escort him off the premises, curtail his ability to teach, which they've done with animals throughout the kingdom. And so he just up and disappears. And so she's left to carry the burden of trying to elevate this whole idea of inclusion and, acceptance.
Man, well, I mean, come on. What you just laid out, and the ties to, social commentary, politics, everything to present day, it is a powerful piece of work, everything you just said. And it's to think that it was, the musical was, gosh, going on 20 years. It was 2003. That's wild. It was eerily prescient. Or I guess we've been dealing with these issues for a while.
Yeah, that's very very wise of you to realize that. And I think most people, when they come, because they're not expecting that, especially the adults. So they come, they think, okay, we're coming to see this, fun musicals to take off on the Wizard of Oz, blah, blah, blah. And then they go home after they see it, and they go to their jobs the next day, or they sit around the dinner table, the breakfast table the next morning, whatever. And they end up talking about, wait a minute, this stuff was talking about issues that are so relevant to everything that's going on, not only in America, but all across the globe today. That's the brilliance of the piece. I don't know if the creatives knew when they were writing this that this is what they were going to have on their hands. But the reason that this musical continues to live, and not only live, thrive, is because, yes, it is a beautiful piece of work in musical theater, but it is also this social commentary that goes deeper than anyone could ever imagine being in an American musical. And that's what makes it live. So parents are bringing their little girls. The little girls are 5, 7, 10 years old. They're blown away by the fairy tale. They grow up to be teenagers. They come back again. They grow up to be parents themselves. They bring their little girls. They bring their little boys. And that's why this thing continues to go. When I did it on Broadway in 2016, 2017.
In the same role or different?
The same role.
Awesome.
And I did it with the late, great Peter Scolari, who, was bosom buddies with Tom Hanks. I mean, he was in every TV show. He won the Emmy while we were doing the show for playing the father on what was it, Girls on HBO.
Wow.
And just this great guy. So I was in with this amazing group of castmates on Broadway, and I asked the producer then, and I said, because when we were doing it on Broadway, I think we hit the 13 or 14 year mark, and it just crossed like $1 billion in revenue while we were doing the show then. And I asked him, I said, so how long do you think this this is going to make it. And he looked at me and said, Michael, honestly, I think we might be able to make 30. And I looked at him and I was just like floored. I was like, whoa, I'm telling you right now, they're going to blow past 30. The show's not going anywhere because it is so, as you said, prescient. It's so
Yeah.
relevant.
And you said you said the $1 billion threshold. I'm pretty sure, at least at the time, I think the Phantom of the Opera and the Lion King were the only other ones to do it. Like Wicked is in that elite company because it is and like you said, it will continue to blow past 30, and it's going to go on forever as far as I'm concerned.
I think about it, man. It's the equivalent of the 10 Commandments on television. It's equivalent of It's Wonderful Life. It's equivalent of
the Wizard of Oz. You know what I mean?
Every year, those things roll out.
Yeah.
And families make plans. Okay, 10 Commandments is coming on at Easter time. We're going to sit down and watch. It's a Wonderful Life comes on at Thanksgiving and Christmas time. We're going to watch. And Wizard of Oz comes on. You know, now we don't have to worry about making a plan because everybody has DVDs and Blu-rays and all that stuff they can watch whenever they want. But it's still a go-to event for families to watch multiple times a year. This show is like that, except that it's on stage. And that's why, and because it is with decade after decade after decade of what happens social and politically in this country and throughout the world, somehow, I don't know, I can't, if I could figure it out, man, I swear to goodness, I would be working on something right now with that formula.
But we bottle up and sell that, man.
Exactly. Somehow they have tapped into the elements that are in this show that continue to be relevant every decade that rolls around. It is just an amazing piece of work. That's all
Absolutely. And it's so well said. And I do want to mention that, I mean, we mentioned it was 2003 was the musical, but it was based on a book from 95, Gregory Maguire's novel, Wicked, the Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. So it's even more prescient when you consider it was written originally in the mid-90s.
Yeah, he came to see the show, and we met him. He came to see us in Boston, and we got to hang out with him.
Cool. Yeah. That's really, really cool. Yeah, and I remember, so I just think it's kind of cool, you know, as we're sort of charting the history of all this stuff. I remember a few years even before that, back when I was in school, I think in like 89, there was this thing called The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, and it spun it from the perspective of the Big Bad Wolf. And then you get Wicked to tell it from the perspective of the Wicked Witch of the West and make her a sympathetic, the protagonist, sort of flip it. And then of course, after that, you got Shrek and all that fractured fairy tales galore. But this, why do you think it is around that time, you know, 90s, early 2000s, that you think do you think it's just sort of coincided with society in general? We're starting to question everything we've been told, right down to the founding fathers, et cetera now, statues, whatever. Do you think we as a society are just more open to say, you know what, maybe bad guys weren't so bad, maybe the good guys weren't always so good? You know, do you think it's just us at the turn of the millennium questioning everything now?
Well, I think there is a curiosity, a really healthy, beautiful curiosity. Thank God it exists. I think in the human psyche. I don't think it's just an American phenomenon. I think it's a worldwide phenomenon, where we want to find the story behind the legend. I got hired by the great and wonderful Harry Belafonte to write a film for him. This was back in '93.
No way, Harry Belafonte. Wow.
Yeah. And it was a story. I won't call it out now, the name of it, but it was a story based on this legend that people have been trying to tell for like 30, 40 years. Harry had been trying, at that point when he hired me, he'd been trying.
Come on, what's the legend? I gotta know.
Well, it was a story of Stagger Lee. There's what's called these Negro toasts. Negro toasts are things that people down in the Mississippi Delta, they still do it to this day, to the best of my knowledge. They when they get their paychecks at the end of the week, they'll go to a juke joint just to celebrate, have a drink or two. And sometimes even now, today, someone in the group will get up and do one of the toasts. And the most famous, there's like Shining the Signifying Monkey, Jack Johnson and the Sinking of the Titanic. And there's about 6 or 8 of them. And the most famous of the toast has always been Stagger Lee. There was that song in the '60s, Stagger Lee went to the, you know, so there's this toast called Stagger Lee, and it's about the baddest brother on the planet, black man on the planet, and all he did was, violently abuse women and kill cops. That's basically the toast, but it's done in this poetic thing. And so Harry, when he hired me, he said, what we have to find is the story behind the legend, because no audience is going to want to sit through more than 5 minutes of a story about a bad dude who's just abusing women and killing law enforcement. We got to find out the story of how he became who the legend says, the myth says he is, and then put the truth out there. And that was a really difficult task. But when we found it, we found this incredible story to tell. And I think the same thing applies with the American and worldwide public psyche, is that when they see a myth or a legend, like the myth of Mike Tyson, we can sit here and say, okay, Mike Tyson, baddest dude, knocks people out in 60 seconds, blah, blah,
Bites
blah.
ears off, etc. The myth, the bigger, larger than life
stuff. But
the
interesting story about Mike is to go behind and find out who Mike really was from the time he was born, his hardships, his small victories, the moments when he found Tinder in his life.
Customata, becoming a father figure, exactly. All that stuff.
Exactly. So that's the kind of stuff that draws people in. And I think that's why there's such a love affair with stories like Wicked, because we pull back the curtain, as they say.
Pay attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. In this case, we want you to pay attention to the man behind the curtain, because the man behind the curtain is telling you the real story of not what you thought you knew, but what really went down. And most of the time, that's infinitely more interesting than the myth itself.
I agree entirely, and it reminds me of remember that John Ford movie, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and they say when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. Well, so I mean that was a genius commentary in the 60s, but now I feel like we're like, okay, we've printed the legend for so long, but now let's peel it back and see if the legend is real. Let's find the truth and the kernels of truth underneath the legend and the myth we've been told all this long. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's where we are, at least in art and culture and society now. Well, I mean, this is so fascinating. I could talk forever about the themes and the story and all of that, but we'd be remiss if we don't go into some of the musical numbers, because, of course, yes, it has all this depth, but then there's also the great show tune type stuff too. So it works on both levels. So remind us some of the famous musical numbers that'll be echoing in our heads as we.
Oh, don't do that to me, man. I mean, I will say, because I mean, I'm going to fail if I got to call out all the titles.
Well, you don't have to, but how about Defying Gravity is the really big one.
Defying Gravity will, I'm in my dressing room when Defying Gravity goes on, and I always listen at the very end. I'm listening to the whole song, but I always listen at the very end, because at the very end, when she gets to the very end of Defying Gravity, there's this just roar throughout the audience, because it's just visually stunning with her flying in the air
on the broom.
Yeah. And here's a funny story. Wasn't funny at the time. When we were doing it on Broadway, this couple came in. I forget, they came in from the Midwest somewhere, and they came in to New York specifically to see Wicked.
Wow.
And during the show,
let's pretend they were from Kansas.
Well, it was somewhere in that area.
They're not in Kansas anymore. This is Broadway.
They came in, and they were an older couple. They were probably in their 60s, I guess. So, and the person behind them in the seats behind them got ill. And got ill all over them.
Like during the show,
during the show. And of course, I mean, really just threw up all over them.
Oh my gosh.
Wicked, the company of Wicked, immediately escorted them backstage, took their clothes, washed their clothes, kept them backstage, washed their clothes, and were dry their clothes. And while they were backstage having their clothes washed, they brought them up to our dressing rooms, where me and Peter Scolari were on stage at that time. And Peter Scolari loved to do magic tricks, and he was really, really good. So to entertain this couple, because we were trying to make sure that number one, they didn't want to sue us, but also that they had their trip just terribly interrupted by this accident, a person just got sick.
Oh my God.
We wanted to make them as comfortable as possible. So I took them into Peter's dressing room. I said, Peter, can you do some show them? So he was doing magic tricks for them, and they were fascinated. Well, oh my God. And we were standing, and I was still in my goat makeup, and Peter's the wizard. So they're in the dress. Wow, we're in the dressing room with the wizard and Dr. Dillman. Okay. And so I said, well, look, and the first act was coming to an end. I said, you want to go, let me take you downstairs so you can see how defying gravity actually happens from the backstage view. And I'm not going to give it away for the audience, but I took them backstage in the wings. So when Elphaba was singing Defying Gravity and she started flying, they could see how on Broadway that trick is actually done. And because we did that for them, they were so in love with the fact that we showed them such kindness and such courtesy. They wrote this amazing thank you letter, and they singled out Peter and I for being so gracious to them, but they were just really complimentary of Wicked, the company, the show, and they vowed that they were coming back, and they did come back like a month and a half later. They came back to the show because we treated them so well.
That is such a great story. Thanks for sharing that. And well, I'm sorry they got sick, but I'm glad in the end they got to see the behind the scenes. That's so, I mean, it is, I saw it on Broadway, and it is just, it's an amazing moment with the flying around on the broom, and the song itself too is beautiful. I mean, there's a reason she went on to sing Let It Go and Frozen and all, you know what I mean? Like that song is amazing. What are some other, I mean, I guess Galinda's big one is Popular. That, talk about that song really quick. I mean, that really sort of shows her bougie side, I guess.
Popular is this, comic tour de force for Galinda when she's trying to give Elphaba this, physical makeover. Number one, with her hair and how she dresses and everything. And it's just this really delightful, really, really funny song that Galinda gets to sing, but it's Elphaba doesn't sing in it, but it's actually a duet between the two of them, because Elphaba is like the straight man in an Abbott and Costello routine here, is basically what it is. And it's just, and the audience just, they're already in love with Galinda, but what it does is it really humanizes Galinda and takes her out of the mean girl category, because the audience then sees, oh, she's really, this wonderful human being in her own right, and she's willing to extend herself to help the girl who is not accepted become accepted and be part of the circle. And that's when Galinda has that's like her plot point in the show. That's when she makes her character change. She becomes not this selfish being, but this altruistic being who is there to, and she still does it in her, look at me fashion. But for her, it's a big deal and a big change. And it's a wonderful moment in the show.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess maybe time for, let's hit one more musical number, sort of towards the end, the closing of the show, that song For Good.
Oh my God.
It is. And the line that always echoes with me is, who can say if I've been changed for the better, but because I knew you. And then she chimes in, because I knew you, I've been changed for good.
That song is so powerful. We came back to our hotel. This was last week, actually. We came back. It was me and two of the other cats in the ensemble. We just happened to come into the hotel together. We got to over by the elevators, and there was this couple standing at the elevator, and they had just come from seeing The Lion King, which is playing down the street from where we are right now, at the Palace Theater. And here I'm in Chicago right now, and they said, were you guys in? We just saw Lion King. Were you in Lion? We said, no, we're in Wicked. She said, oh my God, I saw Wicked last week. Oh my God, I've been changed for good. And she just kept saying, I've been changed for good. No, really, I've been changed for good. We were just like, it was so cute and adorable. That song, that's what she took from the show. That lyric from that song, and it just kept pouring out. She must have said, I've been changed for good 10 times as we got on the elevator and the door closed, and she was still in the lobby just pacing. I've been changed for good. It was so beautiful.
The power of Stephen Schwartz, man. Wow. The songbook is just, it really is. It's incredible. It's some of the best Broadway music ever. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it. I know when people throw out, all-time stuff, that's whatever, but I mean, it is at this point. I mean, come on. We can call it a classic now. It's almost 20 years.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, and Stephen Schwartz is an icon.
Yeah,
Stephen was here. He was here, what, 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he was
yeah.
here. And I gotta tell
Godspell,
you,
Pippin. I mean, yeah, it's
yeah,
amazing.
and I gotta tell you, man, he's still a tour de force. He looks like he's, I don't even know how old Stephen is at this point, but he looks like he's in
74.
he looks like if he told you he was in his 50s, you wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
He's in great shape, man.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. But I think probably because the like yourself grappling with this. I can tell you're a deep thinker in all the profound conversations we're having. But I think that keeps you young. It keeps you, you're not setting. You don't settle. It keeps keep the mind going. You know what I mean? I'm sure
Well,
Stephen Schwartz
it's a
would.
funny thing. I mean, life takes us to places that we never imagined. So this is a true story too, and it's not deep at all. But when I was in seventh, eighth grade, I started off in public school in Washington D.C.
Yeah,
And then,
let's hear the hometown hero angle. Let's go.
well, I started off in public school in Washington D.C. I went to Noyes Elementary, which is on what 10th and Franklin, I think that's where it is in Northeast, over by Catholic University.
Mhm.
And uh, but when I finished sixth grade there, my mother, who was far wiser than me, said, "You're going to Catholic school." And I bucked. I was like, "I don't want to go to Catholic school. I wanted to go to, the junior high or whatever with all my friends." "No, you're going to Catholic school." So went to St. Anthony's over at on 12th Street, where John Thompson was the coach of the boys varsity right before he left.
John, you said John Thompson, as in
John
of
Thompson
Georgetown.
of Georgetown legend. Now I'll tell you that story in a
Rest in
second.
peace.
Yes. So I got there in seventh grade. I think I was in the eighth grade. We did at the grade school, eighth grade, they did Godspell.
Okay.
And I, not knowing who I was going to be, and I declined to audition for the play. And the play turned out to be so good that I ended up coming to all the rehearsals, and I didn't even play bass, but the guys who were the musicians, the teacher and everything, they let me just pick up the bass and sit in like I was one of the musicians so I could be part of the thing. And I was just playing wrong notes. But I was just so in love with Godspell, man. And then to think that all these years later, I would be blessed to be in a production of Stephen Schwartz's, arguably you could argue is his greatest production, his greatest composition.
It will be the one that lives the longest. I'm certain of it.
And I was sitting there playing the bass, watching Godspell on stage, and like I said, I wasn't playing right note the first. I was just playing so I could look like I was cool and I was in the band because I wanted to be a part of this thing so bad that I was stupid enough not to audition for it. But anyway,
enough.
so my John Thompson story, here, real quick.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, let's go. I'm all in.
Freshman year, so I graduated from the middle school, the grade school at St. Anthony's. I went to the high school, which literally was just, they were connected. So I was a freshman, ninth grade. I was 5 feet, 9, maybe. I weighed 105 pounds, dripping wet. And at St. Anthony's at that time, especially if you wanted to be anybody, especially if you wanted to be able to get the girls, you had to play basketball. I was a really good baseball player, but you had to play basketball.
What position were you on the diamond?
Oh, I was third base, shortstop, second base.
Hot corner.
Yeah, but my arm was wonky. So,
but did you play hoops too?
Huh? Well, no, man. Here's the story. So, I like all the other guys. I tried out for the basketball team, and I'm figuring, okay, I'm going in with the mindset I'm going to try out for JV. Day of the tryouts, John Thompson had just left. He had just left. The year before, they went 26-1. They had like 2 or 3 all Mets on the team, and they went 26-1, and they were returning something like 8 guys from that team, 6 or 7 of whom were 6'6" and up. Okay.
Wow.
And who comes in to conduct the audition, because he had just gone to Georgetown. It was his first year at Georgetown, but John Thompson came in to the audition, to conduct the try. He came in to conduct the trials for the basketball team that year. So he said, all right, everybody at the gym, he said, everybody lined up against the far walls. We all lined up against the far wall. he's got this towel, that famous towel he had draped over his shoulder.
Yeah.
He had a towel draped over his shoulder. He had a clipboard in his hand. He said, okay, he wasn't even looking at it. He was looking at the clipboard. He said, okay, everybody here who's trying out for JV, take one step forward. Well, I'm looking at these dudes who are 6'6", 6'10", 6'9". I'm thinking 26-1. My only shot is to try out for JV. So me and 3 other dudes, we took one step forward. John Thompson didn't even look up. He said, okay, all 4 of you gentlemen are cut. Anyone not good enough to make my varsity is not good enough to make my JV. And we were cut. And I begged him. I said, Coach, please. And the second day of trials was the next day. I said, Coach, please let me come back. Just let me come back. I'd like to just show you what I got. So he said, okay, young man, you can come back. So the next day we came back, and in John Thompson practice, you can never lower your arms below, like, shoulder level. Your arms have to always be up in a defensive position. So, and all he did that day was run scrimmages. So we just ran scrimmages and scrimmages. And I gotta say, truthfully, this is all true. I had took 5 shots. I made all 5 of my shots. I made shots over cats who was 6'7", a couple over who was 6'10". And then when he
take
laid
that, Patrick Ewing and
but then
Allen Iverson.
At the end of the trials, when he sat us all down, we were all on the floor. We were gassed. We were just sitting on the floor, just puddles of sweat on the floor. And he called out, all right, the following names that I called did not make the team. You are cut. And I was the number 3 name that he called. So I still didn't make it. But that's my John Thompson story. I got to try out for Coach John Thompson, man.
Wow. And you went 5 for 5 from the field.
I did that day. That's the only day in my life I've ever done that.
And he still got cut. What the hell? Come on.
I
know
knew.
what? Things happen for a reason, because you might not have had this great acting career if you made that. You never know.
I knew that I had no shot. I wouldn't. Basketball was not my thing. I loved it, and I had an average street game. On a good day, I had a slightly above average street game, but that was it. I had no business being on the court with those cats. But it was just the beauty of being able to be there at a time when that program was so prolific. And John Thompson was the reason, and he came back, and I got to be in his space for a minute. That was so cool.
That is so cool, and a story you'll be able to tell forever. That's amazing. That's amazing. Tell me a little bit about, when you didn't become a basketball player. Tell me about some of the Hollywood work you've done. I know you've written some scripts for some directors you might have heard of.
when I graduated school in DC, I got accepted to Juilliard, and I was there. I got to Juilliard right after they had just. You ready for this?
Yeah.
They had just kicked out Robin Williams, Christopher Reeve, and John Hurt.
What do you mean kicked out?
Back then, they don't do it anymore. Back then, at Juilliard, if they didn't feel you measured up to what they were setting their standards for, they kicked you out. If you got a bad critique in a class, if you were late for a couple classes or whatever, or if they just felt like your acting style, your acting talents were not progressing the way they wanted, at the end of the year, they would cut you.
Sorry, Robin Williams, we don't think you have a future.
Yeah, well, and the thing was, they told us these are three names of people that you should not aspire to be. And they said Robin Williams, Christopher Reeve, and John Hurt. That's an Academy Award winner, an Academy Award nominee, and Superman.
Yeah, exactly.
That's who we were not supposed to aspire to. And I was like, what? And I mean, the first day at Juilliard, my class was accepted 30 students. After the first day, kid you not, we were down to 25. 3 people had been asked to leave after the first day. 2 others quit on their own volition. So that was my and Kelsey Grammer was a 4th-year student when I was there. The great Keith David was ahead of me, who does the narration for Ken Burns's. I mean, jazz.
Oh, he's a legend, man.
And yeah. This is Keith, great. So I was there with incredible talent. So from there, once I did that, and then I ended up. My first Broadway production, I came back to New York, and my first Broadway production was the original production of A Few Good Men with Aaron Sorkin.
Wow.
And
what role did you play?
Well, I started off as just one of the drill sergeants, but then I took over one of the main roles of Lance Corporal Harold W. Dawson, the dudes who were being court-martialed for committing the Code Red. Mm-hmm. And I was there with Stephen Lang and Tom Hulse, and I mean
Hmm.
Tom Hulse had just been Academy Award nominated for Amadeus. Steve Lang now, if you may not remember his name, but Steve Lang was the evil Colonel in Avatar.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I mean, there with these incredible, and you know who was just a private soldier. He came in halfway through the run. J.K. Simmons, man.
Oh my God, another future Oscar
Yeah,
winner.
exactly. And he's just standing there parade rest the whole time. So I was there with a great bunch of guys. And that's when I was doing that, I sat on the stairwell in between my entrances and I had a notepad and I just started jotting down some ideas. And every morning I would get up at 5 o'clock. I would go into this little walk-in closet we had because we just had my first child and I didn't want to disturb them. So I went to a little walk-in closet at 5 o'clock every morning and I would write until it was almost time for me to go to the theater for my half-hour call. And by the end of 8 weeks in the closet with this thing that I was writing, I ended up having a script called Pork Pie that Ron Perlman, who had come into the show, the great Ron Perlman had come into the show, he'd taken over the role for Steve Lang. And he was with William Morris at the time, and he heard that I was writing. He said, Mike, let me see what you're writing. And so I said, okay. I was nervous, but I let him see the script. He said, he called me back. He called me back. He saw me the next day or 2 days later at the theater. He said, look, man, I just read this. Would you mind if I walk this into William Morris? I said, nah, please go ahead. And like he walked it in like the next day, and 2 days later, an agent called me and said, can you get over here immediately? I want to meet you. And that was the start of my writing career. And
It's
I
called
ended
pork
up
pie, pork pie, pork pie.
a piece called Pork Pie. Pork Pie meaning the pork pie hat that jazz musicians
Oh,
wear.
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Like the great Lester Young has the most famous pork pie of all time. His like big, So it's a jazz fable, Pork Pie, and it got selected to Sundance.
Wow. Wait, so you actually made the movie and it got into Sundance?
No, it got selected to Sundance in the writers lab.
Gotcha.
But because of that, that's why Harry Belafonte ended up hiring me. Then I got hired to write this holiday movie classic called Hallelujah for American Playhouse that starred Dennis Haysbert, Keith David, Felicia Rashad, and that ended up being the second highest rated film they ever had at that time slot. Something may have beaten it now, but that was back in what, 93? That was
okay.
That was my first film, and James Earl Jones was in it.
Wow.
And because of that, Harry Belafonte hired me to do the thing for him. And then next thing I know, I had just gotten cast in 25th Hour with Spike Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So was doing 25th Hour with Spike. He and I had the same literary agent at the time, Leora Rosenberg, who I loved. And she put us in a room together. She wanted to see if we could work something out, where we could do something. And so, so I'm sitting in the room with Spike, and Spike's sitting at his desk, and I'm sitting on a little hassock, which means I was like 3 feet below him. And it was that classic, power thing. And I'm looking up at him, and I had written a script called Talk to Me, which ended up being done by Focus Features. It starred Don Cheadle, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Taraji P. Henson, and Martin Sheen. And
directed by the great Casey
Lemons, yeah, and quintessential DC story. And that's actually the story of my father.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, Dewey Hughes, the Chiwetel Ejiofor character, is my father. So if you know Kathy Hughes and Radio One and TV One, that's my family.
Wow.
So I ended up being the writer on this film, and Spike got a hold of the script, and he really wanted to Talk to Me, but the producers had another director in mind, and they didn't want to give it to Spike. And so I said, Spike, I can't give you that one. I mean, I wanted to give it to him, but I said, I can't give you that one. He said, okay, if I can't have that one, this is what I'm interested in. And I said, what? And this is pretty much verbatim what Spike said to me. He said, lesbians who want to become mothers are using turkey bases to get pregnant.
So that was he threw that out.
That was
write me something.
That was it. And I sat there on this little hassock, and my mouth hit the floor, literally. And then, because I had never heard of this. Okay, I'd never heard of that.
Right.
And I said thankfully, my inner brain said, Genet, close your mouth. Spike Lee just opened the door for you to write a movie for him. Get it together, man.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I quickly closed my mouth and I said, and then he said after that, he said, I don't know what the story is, but I'm interested in that. And so I quickly said, okay, give me 3 days and I'll give you your story. And so while we were filming 25th Hour, I was, at night I'd be working on this, just putting together this treatment, right? And so we go on set and he called cut after a scene, and I say, Spike, come here. And I said, this is what I got. So I whispered, blah, 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 this blah, 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 blah happens, blah, blah. And then I stopped and he said, and I didn't think he was gonna like any of this stuff. And he said, oh, man, I like that. Cool. Give me some more. I said, I don't have any more. Wait till tomorrow. So I went back the next night, typed it up, on set the next day, cut, Spike, come here. Blah, 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 blah. Oh man, that's fantastic. Give me some more. I don't have, wait, give me till tomorrow. Next day, same thing. On set, cut. Spike, come here. Blah, 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 blah. He said, give me some more. That's great. I said, that's it. That's all I got. He said, cool. Write the treatment. I said, you're kidding me. So I wrote out the treatment and I wrote this 15, like the classic treatment story is Joe Esterhaus, who did Showgirls and Basic Instinct. When he did Basic Instinct, he got the like a 4-picture deal or something. I may be somewhat inaccurate, but basically he got a 4-picture deal off of a 2-paragraph treatment, just 2 paragraphs.
Wow.
He got a 4-picture deal for like millions of dollars. I wrote Spike a 15-page treatment for this film, and we were shooting in Brooklyn. And when I brought the treatment to set that day, he called an early lunch. He said, Cut, we're going to lunch. And he said, Mike, come with me. So we sat out on the sidewalk in Brooklyn, and he made me sit next to him. I'm talking about agonizing, while Spike sat there and read word for word 15 pages of my treatment. I had to turn and face away from him because I could hear the pages turn. I was just like, oh, he's gonna hate this. This was stupid. What was I thinking? And then when he finished, he turns to me and said, cool. Write the script.
Wow.
I was like, what? He said, no, seriously, write the script. And we wrapped on 25th Hour. I think it was like around September 23rd, something like that. We wrapped on a scene in Central Park. And I delivered the script to him. I started the script then, and I delivered the script to him the day before Thanksgiving in his office. And Spike, when I gave him the script, Spike rubbed his hands together like you do when you say, "Ooh, this is good."
Yeah, he's excited.
He said, "Okay, cool. Now I got something to do tomorrow besides watch football." And he read the script, and a year later, we were finished principal photography on this movie. People in general public won't understand the significance of that. I'm telling you right now, that does not happen in Hollywood. That does not happen in the entertainment industry. Spike Lee's the only director I know who could fast track and get something done with that rapidity,
wow.
that expediency. We were done principal photography a year later. I've got a couple projects now, this TV series that I'm selling that I've been on for 6 years. Okay.
Do you want to tease any of this? What you got coming up?
I'm not going to tease the TV series because we're close. We're close to getting this thing sold, and it's going to be a big hit. I'll just say that. But I don't want to jinx that. I'm just saying I know that, but I've been on this thing for a long time. Pork Pie, my film, my screenplay Pork Pie, I wrote that back in 1990. It got close to being made 3 times, and it's going to get made. But I mean, we're talking what, 30 years now?
Yeah, it takes the time it takes sometimes.
I mean, the great David Brown, producer David Brown, who was married to Helen Gurley Brown, who was the head of Cosmopolitan magazine, but he was the producer on Jaws, producer on A Few Good Men. So when he was producing Few Good Men, he also got wind of the script that I was writing, Pork Pie, and he said, Michael, I'd like to read it. So I gave it to him, and then next thing I know, David Brown called me over to he and Helen Gurley Brown's home, which was over on Central Park West or whatever, I forgot where it was. And I'm sitting in the foyer of his home when this this sofa or whatever out there, and he comes out with my script and he sits down with me and he says how much he loved the script. And one of the reasons he identified with it so much was because it was a story about a young man who grew up without a father, and David Brown, that was his story too. And then David Brown told me, he said, this is what you need to understand. In this industry, especially from a cinematic standpoint, it's easier to, these were pretty much his words verbatim, it's easier to get the space shuttle to the moon than it is to get a movie deal done.
Seriously.
Because in order to get a movie deal done, every star in the universe has to align perfectly. And if one of those stars falls out of alignment, your entire deal is done.
Yep.
And I've had to hold on to that with regards to Pork Pie, because I know it's going to get done. It's just that the stars have aligned a few times, but one is always falling out of place. And that's just the nature of this game. And you gotta have, I tell all young artists who come to me and ask me, what do I need to do to get in this business? I say, well, first thing you need to do is go to the store, buy a rhino suit, put it on, and just get ready to, endure all the no's that you're going to endure. Because that's what this game is. The entertainment industry's mantra every day that they wake up is no. That's what they have to say. They have to say no because they get 100,000 submissions on this, 50,000 submissions on that a year, and they're only allowed to greenlight 8. And they know that if they greenlight a project that ends up being a big flop, they're going to lose their comfy office in the corner with the high back leather chair, and they don't want to do that. Right. I mean, does the public know that the movie Ghost was rejected by every studio in Hollywood?
Oh yeah. And people were passing on The Matrix. There's so many stories of that,
Yeah, exactly. So you just have to be able to endure the storm. Keep asking yourself, how bad do you want it? And if you want it bad enough, you get up the next day and you continue to climb the mountain. That's basically what it is,
Yeah. That is such great advice, and everyone needs to listen to that. Any young listeners out there in the DC area that are writing some screenplays, take that advice, please, keep at it. Man, you're clear. I thought we were just gonna hop on, we'll talk Wicked a little bit, but this turned into an amazing, one of my favorite conversations. This was freaking fantastic.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm excited to come home. I haven't worked in DC since I think 2008. I haven't been at the Kennedy Center since A Few Good Men in 1990.
Okay? Oh wow!
So it's a pleasure to be able to come home, see some family, do what I do back at home. I mean, I haven't. Last time I was there, I was at Arena Stage, and that was I think 2008, and that's when they were in renovations, and we were actually working out of a theater at the Pentagon.
What was the show?
The show was, oh my God, Resurrection. It was supposed to be, it was destined to be the male equivalent to For Colored Girls Who Consider Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. It was the male version. And it almost made it into New York, but again, the industry came in and tripped it up at the last minute. It was a wonderful piece about, the male experience and in urban America on all levels, from the cat who's just the everyman to the guy who's, making high six figures as a high-powered attorney, the guy who's got the bodega store on the corner. It was just this incredible piece of work. And the great Oz Scott, who directed the original For Colored Girls, was our director, and we thought we were going to make it in, and it got vetoed at the last second for us to come into New York. But it's a wonderful production, and that's the last time I've been in DC actually as working was with that show.
Wow. Well, we're excited to have you back home then. And, the spirit of John Thompson will be in the audience, hopefully down here. You've lived such an amazing life since growing up in DC, all the Broadway and Hollywood, and even a little basketball legend there in this interview.
Well, I got to work with another DC native on a thing that's about to start airing on December 22nd on Peacock, the Best Man movie. They're making a limited series called
Final Chapters.
Final Chapters, yeah. And so I got to work all my stuff. I got to work with Regina Hall, and she's a DC girl too. And when we found that out, we just had a real real heavy bond together. I love working with her. She's a great lady, and she's another Catholic school girl too. So we had that experience to talk about, and so that's what, other than Wicked, that's what I've got coming out. And in the meantime, man, I'm getting close to finishing my first fictional novel. I'm excited about it, and that's what I've been doing during the days while I'm doing the show here. I'm
Are we
working.
allowed to say what that's about, or at least the genre? Or
Now I will say this. Here's what I will say. Um, and this is what I honestly believe. I'm not just saying this because it sounds good.
sure,
When you saw, if you saw the Motown special that they did on Showtime or whatever it was, and I say Smokey Robinson was talking about, at one point Marvin Gaye was in the studio working on his new album. So Smoke said he went by to see his buddy to see how it was going. So he walked into the studio and he said, Marvin, how's the recording coming? He said Marvin turned to him and just had this look on his face and just shook his head and said, Smoke, God's writing this album.
and he
And the
believed it.
album that he was talking about turned out to be What's Going On.
Wow.
Arguably the greatest album ever created.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, that's all I'm saying, is that I don't know until I get to the end how it's going to hold up, but I'm telling you right now, God's writing this book.
Wow, okay? That's a teaser right there.
So I'm excited. I feel blessed to be given these words and given the story, the characters, and I'm confident that it's going to be a powerful piece of work. Whether it makes the mainstream or not, that remains to be seen. But I'm going to do everything in my power to see that it gets a shot. But I know that I got magic going on. That and I don't ever front on that. I don't tell you that I was great when I wasn't great. If I had a bad day, I'm gonna tell you I had a bad day. I'm telling you right now that I got some magic going on here. I'm really excited about that.
Oh, wow. Well, I can't wait. I mean, we should definitely, maybe we could set up a follow-up interview or something. I would love to find out more about it.
Yeah, we'll see. It's my first venture into the novel format. I wrote one book that was published. They must not know who I think I am, which was an inspirational stories about being in the entertainment industry for people who are always thinking about quitting. But this is my first fictional novel, and I was always intimidated by the format of novel.
Yeah.
And I figured, when the pandemic hit, someone posted, and I don't even know who it was, and I'm assuming that it was accurate. They posted something that evidently Denzel said, and I had done the Broadway production of Fences with him and Viola. I was one of the understudies in that production. Wow. So they posted this thing that Denzel said when the pandemic is here. So he said something to the effect, the pandemic is here, y'all. So you ain't got nowhere to go. Now's the time to do that thing you always said you were going to do. Write that novel, build that, whatever.
Exactly.
Get to work. And I thought to myself, he's right. And I'd had this idea and I jotted down, bits and pieces of the thing for like a year and a half before that. And I had just not pulled the trigger to truly sit down and start writing it. But when I saw that post that Denzel was attributed to Denzel, I said, you know what? Yeah, I might as well. And so I started right at the beginning of the pandemic. And and I'm almost finished now. So that's going on 3 years.
Yeah.
I've always wondered why it takes, because when you write a screenplay, this. When you write a screenplay, especially if you're on deadline, you're writing it within 8 weeks, 10 weeks tops. 12 weeks tops to get that draft out.
Yeah, knock it out.
And I've always wondered why it takes novelists so, what Coates, he was talking about, it took him 10 years to write his latest book. And I was like, why would it take 10 years? But I totally understand now, because life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And a novel requires a different type of attention, and life gets in the way.
Yeah.
And so this thing that I started, and I'm always a writer that makes his deadlines when it comes to my screenplays.
Sure.
But this is a 3-year odyssey so far. So, but magic is happening. Magic.
I'm glad. I think the pandemic's gonna. Well, I can't wait to read it and hear more about it. But I think the pandemic's it's gonna separate the who is just passing time and who actually used this to do what Denzel said. Who used the time to actually put pen to paper and hunker down and do it. Because like you're saying, it does take time.
It does take time, and Sonny Rollins said it, man. what's the point of living 100 years if you're not going to do anything with it? So I'm trying to,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to do something with it, you know. And then after that, then you got to play the game, and the game keeps changing. That's the quandary that I've been in
Yeah.
now, especially with the TV series, because we have, I mean, I've got the producers that produce folk talk to me are producing my producing partners on the TV series. So I'm locked and loaded. The script has already received incredible reviews. Our pitch was received incredible. We've only done like 3 or 4 pitches, so we shut it down because what has happened is in the industry you cannot get, and you probably know this, but you cannot get a deal done unless you have your showrunner locked in.
Right.
And we have yet to lock. We thought we had a showrunner locked in twice, and we lost them both. The last one we just lost. We lost her because she really wanted to do it, but the show that she just finished doing with Kerry Washington is getting picked up for the 2nd season. So she just said, Michael, I can't hang you guys up. You know, I'm gonna be tired. Yeah. So okay. And this other cat, Cheo, who's one of the top showrunners in the game, he had just ended his deal with Netflix, and he was trying to figure out where he was going to land. Well, where he landed was at Apple TV. Of course, Apple, when they gave him the deal, they want him to do their stuff for the foreseeable future. So he said, Mike, it's going to take at least 2, maybe 3 years before I can bring you in. I still want to do this, but you know, we just couldn't wait that long. So that's just where we are. We're going to get it done. You just got to lock down your showrunner, but the showrunners are the premium asset in all of television. And there's only so many of them to go around. And most of them are, you know, locked in on multiple shows at once. So it's, you know, it's a slog, and
the stars aligning, like you said earlier.
Yeah, you just got to wait. Yeah. And so we're pretty confident that 2023, we're going to pull the trigger. We're going to get it sold. And when we get it sold, this one's going to be one of the best shows one of the best hour dramas in all of television. It's that the script is that the pilot is that good.
What's it called? Or you're not allowed to say what it's called?
I'm just, you know, I'm not going to say anything.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
No, yeah, no.
But this is different from the novel. You're also doing the novel.
Oh, no, this is totally, no. The novel's the novel, the TV series, the TV series. Yeah. And, you know, and if I get both of those done and they become hits, baby, I'm walking away into the sun, buying a house in Costa Rica, man.
That's something to hang your career on right there. I believe you when you say it's magic or the Marvin Gaye, you know, God's writing this one or whatever the analogy. I believe it. I can hear it in your voice.
Dude, when Smoke said that, and he said what Marvin said, and you found out that the album he was talking about was What's Going On, it sent chills down my spine. because you know when you got something special going on, and I'm always, everything that I do is connected to the universe and to the creator. So I feel really confident that, matter of fact, everything I've ever done, I've been whispered in my ear by an angel, man, to say, hey, put this down on the page. Some stuff I put down on the page, man, I've had to push back from the computer because I'm looking, I'm saying, who wrote that? That passage right there is beyond me.
I believe it. I think people tap into that higher power to get some.
Yeah,
of this
man.
They have to. There's no explanation.
Michael Jackson said that stuff, and when he said it, we thought he was nuts. I totally get it now. And I met Michael Michael and I are four days apart. I'm 4 days older than Michael. I met Michael when we were both 18 years old.
Wow.
I met him at a preview, not the premiere, but the preview of The Wiz at the Cinerama Dome in LA. And
speaking of Wicked, that'll bring us full circle.
Right, exactly. And after he came in with Quincy to see the preview, and at the end of the preview, he was just standing in the lobby by himself, of course, with his 2 bodyguards. But I'm looking over them, saying, "That's Michael Jackson." And my friends from school, they were saying, "You can't go over there." I said, I'm going over. I'm going to talk to Michael Jackson. So I walked over. And the bodyguards converged. He said, Michael said, no, they don't come on. and we ended up talking, and we ended up hitting it off. And we got along so well. He asked me to come, why don't you come on back to the house? And I'm telling you, it was just a straight friendship thing. The dude was so lonely. At that point in his life, he was already in this fishbowl, and he was just looking for a friend, and we clicked. And I had to pass because I didn't have a car in LA at that time, and my school was 45 minutes up the highway, and my ride was over across the lobby and over there waiting to go. So I had the best. But anyway, Michael said later in his life, not too long before he passed, when he was going through all this stuff, and one of the interviewers asked him, well, why are you not sleeping? And Michael said, and I think this is accurate. I mean, if it's not, then I'll stand corrected and forgive me for spreading something that wasn't true. But I think it's accurate. Michael said, oh no, I don't sleep because I don't want to miss the next idea for the next hit song. And if I'm afraid if I go to sleep, God's going to give the next hit song to Prince.
Wow.
And at the time,
and tragic now in hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time, people thought, oh, he's crazy. He's lost his mind. I totally get it. You do, what he was saying was you got to stay connected to the universe because the ideas are going to come. And if you're not open to receiving them, they are going to go to someone else.
And that's why a lot of times you'll see the same ideas. You know, sometimes you'll see the same ideas pop up in like 3 or 4 different places at the same time. And it's
exactly.
Those people weren't in a room together. They tapped into whatever that divine current was at the time, and it came down, and it's who's going to harness it and write it first.
Exactly, man. I mean, exactly. Gloria Naylor, the great Gloria Naylor, who wrote Women of Brewster Place and everything. I did one of her plays, and we were riding back from rehearsal or whatever. And I was telling her about a script that I was working on at that time. And it kind of matched something that she was working on. And she just simply said to me, Mike, ideas, they're in the universe. We're not the only ones that have them. Multiple people have a similar idea. That's why projects can be similar to the next project over, the next project over. That's, and it was accurate and it was true. And I didn't get afraid of the fact that, oh my God, I'm writing something that's similar to what she was writing. And she was just saying, all of us who are artists, those of us who are truly connected to the universe, yeah, we're going to tap into the same rhythm at time, and we're going to end up coming with material that is similar in scope. Don't be afraid of it. Just write yours, and I'll write mine, and we'll see which one lands. It's cool.
Exactly. Well, it's been thanks for tapping into my same wavelength for this hour and change or whatever we've been doing it. It's been a pleasure, man. It's been great. I mean, literally could talk to you all day about this stuff.
I grew up with WTOP, brother. So, this is like coming home, man.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much. This was awesome. And best of luck with the series and the novel and everything. But first and foremost with Wicked. We'll invite everyone.
Hope you and your family can come see us while we're in town, man.
Definitely. It's at the Kennedy Center, December 8th through January 22nd. It's Wicked. Don't miss it. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Appreciate you too, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.
Explain your DNA on 10 cases, man.
You're inside the police interrogation room with the alleged Potomac River rapist.
I'm not guilty on any of this stuff.
So calm, so reasonable. Could this be the man who terrorized women for 9 years before murdering a brilliant scientist 2 decades ago? Experience one of the most fascinating true crime podcasts available. Join crime reporter Paul Wagner for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare series. Search American Nightmare Podcast on all podcast platforms.
I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.